Imagine holding a secret that could feed an entire empire. Only 12 people alive actually know how to write it. Tomorrow, one of them collapses, and the knowledge dies with him. This was the real crisis ancient humans faced 5,000 years ago. Their answer to it is still sitting in your life right now. Could you have invented the first school? 50,000 years ago, learning had no rooms, no desks, no teachers at all. Children learned simply by watching hunting, gathering, and surviving beside the adults around them. This worked fine for small bands, where every skill could be seen and copied directly. But then humans began farming, settling down, and building the first permanent villages. Suddenly there was far more to know: planting seasons, irrigation, tools, and trade. So a new question emerged. How do you teach knowledge to people you've never met? Villages grew into cities, and cities needed rules, records, and organized administration to survive. Someone had to track harvests, taxes, and trade. Memory alone was no longer enough. The answer arrived around 3,400 BCE in the city of Uruk, in Sumer. Sumerian scribes invented a system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay, a script we now call cuneiform. At first, cuneiform recorded only simple things: grain counts, sheep herds, beer rations, and temple offerings kept by priests. But cuneiform was brutally difficult to master. Hundreds of symbols, each carrying several meanings depending on context. So a new question followed immediately. Who could possibly learn hundreds of symbols well enough to use them correctly? The answer was to choose children early, usually sons of officials and priests, and train them for years. This training needed its own building, and so the world's first known school was born. The Sumerians called it the Edubba, the tablet house. Inside the Edubba, students sat cross-legged on packed earth floors, facing rows of clay tablets stacked along the walls. Students were called sons of the tablet house, and they arrived every day before sunrise, carrying fresh, wet clay from home. The school day began with the simplest task: copying long lists of words and syllables over and over, until the shapes became memory. Discipline was harsh. A surviving Sumerian text called School Days describes students beaten for lateness, poor handwriting, or simply talking. As students advanced, they memorized proverbs, hymns, and multiplication tables, reciting them aloud until every line was perfect. Mathematics became its own discipline. Scribes learned multiplication, division, and how to precisely measure fields and canals. The most advanced students copied entire works of literature, myths, hymns to the gods, and the earliest written law codes. Full training could take up to a decade, transforming a child into a fully qualified professional scribe. Those who finished became powerful figures, working inside temples, palaces, and royal courts across the land. Scribes became indispensable. No temple, palace, or trade route could function without someone trained to read and record. Sumer was not alone. The exact same crisis was quietly unfolding along the Nile in ancient Egypt. Egyptian priests developed hieroglyphs, and just like Sumer, they built schools inside temple complexes to train new scribes. These scribal schools trained boys from priestly and elite families to serve the pharaoh's growing administration. The pattern repeated exactly: strict discipline, endless copying, and deep respect for anyone who could finally read and write. Far to the east, under China's Shang dynasty, a similar system emerged around inscriptions carved into bone and shell. Across 3 separate civilizations, the same pattern appeared independently. Wherever writing was invented, formal schools soon followed. Schools were never really born from pure curiosity. They were born from necessity, from civilizations that could no longer survive on memory alone. Over the following centuries, formal instruction slowly spread beyond scribes into law, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. Later, Greek and Roman institutions built directly on this foundation, formalizing classrooms, structured lessons, and organized curricula. The core idea was refined over thousands of years, but its essential shape never really changed: a shared space, an expert guide, and repeated practice. The modern classroom you sat in as a child traces its lineage directly back to those cramped, clay-covered tablet houses. So think back to that first question: how do you protect knowledge that only a few people know how to carry? The answer wasn't a secret. It was a school. 5,000 years later, that same answer is still passed down every single day, in classrooms exactly like the ones you once sat in.